Kia ora.
Te mana whakawā.
Ko Nukurako.
Kia ora e te mana whakawā. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the second reading of the Environmental Protection Authority Protection of the Environment Amendment Bill, sir. The Local Government and Environment Select Committee, which I am privileged to be a member of, sir, recommended by majority that this bill not be passed. Members on this side of the House, sir, took the view during the first reading of this bill that it was unnecessary and should not proceed to Select Committee. This House decided, though, in fact, that it would proceed to the committee, and I believe, sir, that was an unfortunate decision, because participating in this Select Committee process only made it more clear that this bill was unnecessary. Sir, I do want to acknowledge the member who put this bill forward. As far as I can tell, Meka Whaitiri had the best of intentions in putting this bill into the ballot. She appears to have genuinely thought that these 7 extra words would somehow enable the Environmental Protection Authority to more effectively carry out its role of protecting the environment. But unfortunately, sir, they don't. The evidence we received, sir, in Select Committee clearly told us that. When Meka Whaitiri, sir, introduced this bill in the first reading, she suggested that there had been some sort of mistake when the Environmental Protection Authority Act 2011 was passed. That the original legislation, sir, was supposed to contain the words protects, maintains and enhances New Zealand's environment, but somehow someone forgot to put them in. Sir, in fact, the preamble of this bill also includes this claim that leaving these words out was somehow an important oversight. I would, sir, have expected that for an assertion like that to be included in the preamble of the member's bill, the member would have done their research and actually been sure that it was valid. Neither I, sir, nor Meka Whaitiri were in this House when the Environmental Protection Authority legislation was passed. But I have done my research and it's clear that the clause she has suggested was never needed in the bill. And it is really at odds with the reason we have the arm's length environmental regulator like the EPA. So the EPA was set up to carry out functions which are set out in a number of the other acts. The Primary Act does set out some broad functions and objectives, but I would suggest that the most important objective is the one that states, sir, that the EPA must act in a way that furthers the objectives or purposes stated in the Act, which sets out the particular functions it is carrying out. So in this way, the Environmental Protection Authority derives its objectives from a number of different acts, rather than just the Environmental Protection Authority Act. So, sir, what are these acts? And my colleague Marama Fox actually highlighted some of them. I want to sort of go through and highlight them because I think these are a very important part of why this side of the House actually disagrees with this bill. So, first of all, we have the Resource Management Act 1991. And when we look at the purpose clause, which this is also reflected in the legislation protecting the EEZ. And so one of the purposes in that Act refers to protection of natural and physical resources. The protection of natural and physical resources. So it goes on to talk about safeguarding the life-supporting capacity of certain resources and avoiding, remedying or mitigating any adverse effects on the environment. Sounds to me, sir, like the protection of the, like it's about the protection of the environment. Then, sir, we have the Climate Change Response Act 2002. This act is focused on one particular aspect of environmental management. Sir, it's about the prevention of climate change through reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. So the purpose statement of the Act is comprehensive, but it could be summed up as enabling New Zealand to meet its international obligations to combat climate change. If combating climate change, sir, is not protecting the environment, well then I'm not sure what the members opposite think it is. Is the addition, sir, of another 7 words requiring the protection of the environment going to somehow change how the EPA administers its duties under the Climate Change Response Act 2002? I don't think so. I do not think so. Sir, the Hazardous Substances and the New Organisms Act 1966 states the purpose of this act is to protect the environment and its health and safety.
No, it won't.
Sir, it's about the health and safety of the people and the communities by preventing or managing the adverse effects of hazardous substances and new organisms. Sir, maybe the problem here is that the words maintains and enhances are missing. When the EPA carries out its duties under the Act, sir, is Meka Whaitiri concerned that it might only attempt to protect the environment rather than also enhancing and maintaining it? Or is the purpose set out in the Hazardous Substances and New Organisms Act 1996 exactly fit for purpose already? Sir, it is to protect the environment from dangers posed by these substances and organisms. There's the Ozone Layer Protection Act 1996, which gives it purpose as to help protect human health and the environment. Once more, what is missing here? Nothing. The purpose of the Environmental Protection Authority is clear. It's in name, but it's also in the legislation that the EPA derives its powers from. And if the purpose statements in these pieces of legislation are not sufficient to ensure the EPA protects the environment, why has Labor only just discovered this deficiency? Mr. Speaker, the Environmental Protection Authority was established by the national government to be at arm's length regulator of environmental standards. By the very nature, sir, of the functions it carries out, the protection of the environment is at the core of what the EPA does. Adding 7 words, sir, which supposedly makes the difference between the EPA protecting the environment or not sounds noble. It sounds noble, and at the first glance, sir, it might make sense. I'm not surprised that a number of people submitted to say actually they thought it made sense for the EPA to protect the environment. But having looked into the purpose of the EPA, sir, and the legislation from which it draws its functions, it is clear to me that the protection of the environment is already clearly spelled out in each of the EPA's functions. This bill, sir, is definitely unnecessary and could potentially undermine the EPA's role as an arm's-length regulator. I once again, sir, acknowledge Tuahine, Meka Whaitiri, in bringing this bill to the House. I wish I could acknowledge the work of the member and her colleagues on the Select Committee, sir, but it's hard to be complimentary about a party which is so determined to ignore the advice of officials that its members will sit in the Select Committee, listen to the experts' advice, but still push ahead, sir, with a bill they have advised is unnecessary. Sir, kia ora. E mea te kā koe. Kia ora.
Very good. Very strong.
Dr. Megan